All right. Well, we're here for another live event, and this is our first time doing a live event on Riverside specifically rather than Vimeo. So, we'll see if audience members can jump in, ask questions, and so on. But today is our usual guest. So we got Louis Shulman. As per usual, this is our automations newsletter, all-round expert, the man in charge. Orbit Metrics, marketing genius. I don't know how much more of an introduction. What have I missed there, Lewis? Podcasting expert,
That's
dog
I'll
owner.
take what you gave me. It's plenty. Yeah, it feels good. I feel good with that.
So we've got the man himself today. Like every Tuesday, we're going to be covering some sort of different automation, and we're in talks with a few other people that Lewis has put in contact with as well, to come on and do kind of automation talks. And this will be all over YouTube and other kind of streaming platforms. But I'll let you take it from today and kind of cover what you want to cover.
Yeah, so we can kind of go into the context behind it. I had this idea yesterday, and this is more so a meta skill than it is automating I mean, it's one specific process. Really, there's one piece of this that's automated, and then it's kind of what you can do once you have that automated, what's really useful about it. And I don't know if you're familiar with the term, Liam, personal knowledge management. Are you familiar with the term?
No, explain that to me.
Yeah, it's kind of a. Some people see it as pretty overkill, and I tend to believe there's kind of a fine line. Like in companies, a lot of companies will work on this really detailed Notion wiki of like all of their policies, and there's a world in which sometimes you use it and it's great, and then there's a world in which you just spend all your time organizing your notes and not really like doing anything with them. So there's a fine line there, but I tend to believe that there still is some value or a lot of value in having your notes organized. A lot of people like highlight books when they read them and then not do never actually go look at the highlights. It's like, okay, what was the point of that? Or you read articles on, I don't know if you've heard of Instapaper or Pocket, those read it later apps, or you bookmark a tweet. And then how often do you go actually look at your bookmark tweets? And,
Mm.
we consume all this content. A lot of business people or people, entrepreneurial people consume content, and the tweet has really good marketing advice or has really good a good framework that you want to try to use for a script in an email or a framework for a script for a video. And you read these good ideas and don't really do anything with them. So I'll share my screen in a second. But that's kind of the context. Is on the personal knowledge management side. It was a area of learning that I was very into a couple of years ago. And one of those things that's kind of been running in the background as a habit, right? You build all these habits and learn these things, then you like don't even forget it, that you don't appreciate it anymore. But then yesterday when I was prompting myself, I was like, how do I think, what are some automations I could share with this community? I was like, oh, well, just yesterday, I was using my notes from a book that were automatically in my notes app. It was a sales book, right? So I'm working on improving our sales process. And this is like where the business application comes in. And so I was reading a sales book over the past couple of weeks, and I was having all these, I was reading it at the gym, right, on the bike. So like I'm not taking notes in the sense of like I'm going to write this down. I'm just kind of casually highlighting on the Kindle. Then later in the day, as I'm working on the sales stuff, I'm like, I really wish I could retrieve that thing from the book in this efficient way. Then I just remembered that I set up this automation like years ago that automatically puts all the exports from my Kindle in the Notes app. And then where the AI comes in, right, is that's when you say, okay, well, my goal, for example, and I'll start walking through all this on the screen, is to let's just say specifically work on like objection handling. Like I want to have my FAQ for the most common objections that I get on a sales call, right? I mean, what I sell, right? I sell newsletters, content writing services, marketing services, but it really doesn't matter. They're still the same general kinds of objections, right? Oh, I need to think about this. Let me chat with somebody from my team first. I don't know if we can afford this. Um, can I trust you guys? Like, what kind of results have other clients been getting? And so that's just one example. And the book, had these great scripts for all of those things. And then so I have this combination of kind of a bullet point outline of what I want to create to put inside of my own company wiki for my own sales training for myself and for other people on my team. And then I also just generally speaking can combine that with the notes from the book to like just work more efficiently. And then use AI to you throw all the information in the AI, and then you start your working session. Right, here's my draft, how to improve it based on what the author said in this book in this chapter. And it doesn't have the book, but it has all of your notes. Because if you put a lot of times you don't have the PDF of the book. So you buy it on your Kindle, you buy a print copy. You can't just load the book into AI. But if you highlight most of it that's useful to you, then you export it. So I'll go through a couple tools here, and then you just tell me, Liam, how my um, if like the monitor is too big, too small,
We're looking
zoomed
pretty good
out.
right now.
Yeah, this is just if I had any other bullets as it came up here. So specifically, um, the tool I use is called Readwise, and it has like this nice feature where you can just review a couple highlights every day. That's not the most interesting part. What I wanted to demonstrate were, well, one, when you use this for like a number of years, you can see like I've had 266 books that this has drawn highlights from. Some of this is
Mm.
connected to like my family's account, so there's some like random fiction that my siblings or parents read that does get looped into here. Supplemental books are books that you read on paper, so you didn't import your highlights, but then it just shows you the most popular highlights from the community for that book. So just other things that are popular. Then if you go through your daily review and you like that highlight, you can then save it to your library. And then tweets I've saved, and then other like highlights and flashcards I've made within this app. You can set up to just email you random highlights just to like review and keep these ideas top of mind. But yeah, and then if we go through the import settings, so you can see it automatically is connected to my Kindle and syncing every day. So I read maybe a little bit at night, a little bit in the morning, and then by the next day, those notes are in this app. Or Instapaper, I save an article. Instapaper has the ability to highlight articles, like highlight the text. That was a really good idea. Maybe I'm reading a newsletter, I open it in my browser, I save it to Instapaper, and then I highlight it as an idea I want to revisit in the future. And then Goodreads, it has all these other places. So maybe some of these other apps are familiar to people. I know a lot of people like to read articles on medium.com. I don't know what
Used
else
to
on here,
write
but
on
this
there
is just,
myself. You can save
what's
my
that?
ideas if you want.
Exactly. Free, you can, oh, I've done this one as well. You can email things directly. So you can do like a send to email address. There's a Discord bot, which is pretty cool. So anyway, whatever tools you kind of regularly use. Oh, this looks like snipped. It looks like you're saving clips from highlight or from podcasts. So that could be something.
Mm.
Again, this is something I set up so long ago that I just like didn't appreciate I had until recently when I had to think about this. But yeah, so saving from highlights. So those are all the places you can automatically ingest data, and then you can automate export data to Notion or to Google Docs or to Mailbrew, something I use as well. That's something that sends me an email of like a couple of different, like it sends me the Bitcoin price, and if I publish any videos on my company YouTube channel, that's like a whole other automation. It's like an automated daily email digest of whatever custom stuff you want. So I get a couple prices of a couple assets, and then if any YouTube channels that I care to follow publish any videos. But I specifically export all of my notes to Roam Research. That's just the app that I like best. Again, you can do a CSV file. You can do any of these other note-taking apps, Google Docs, etc. So you still with me so far, Liam?
Still with you. And what do you
Okay.
choose to export to for the majority?
Roam Research. That's just what I've been using for a long time.
Mm. What does that look like? I've never even heard of that platform.
Yeah, I have that open. So, I mean, I can show you first the homepage for it, right? So, Roam Research is very cool. It kind of came to popularity in 2020. It's really not as popular now as it was then. I just got really good at the tools. Like, I just learned the keyboard shortcuts and all that stuff that makes it really efficient for me. And it connects all of your notes in with a lot of backlinks, and this will start to make sense in a second. So the book I was reading, so now we're inside of Rome, we're inside of my database, and the new model of selling is the book I was reading, the sales book I was reading. Jeremy Miner, I don't know if you've ever seen him on YouTube or Instagram. He has a lot of good content. He also lives in Arizona. I've met him once or twice, had him on my podcast a few years ago, and just wanted to read his book because I thought he was really bright on the podcast, and now that sales is something I'm really trying to improve, I was reading his book. So you can see all of these highlights are added every day since I've read it at various times throughout the day automatically. So they first were synced by Readwise on August 9th, and it links to locations in the book as well. So I can go click into the book. So let me zoom in. Those are a lot from the intro. And then, so this is where the AI comes in, right? So this is useful, but this is kind of a lot of work to like, I clearly over highlighted, right? Like I highlighted so much But now what I can do is just, copy and paste the whole thing and go into ChatGPT and say something. And this is where, the options are unlimited for what you want to do with the book now that you've taken the time to do this. So, like, based on these notes I took from the sales book, what is the best question to ask a prospect after a small talk to initiate the conversation? And then I just paste it in all the notes and ask the question and see what it says. So yeah, this is right. Like, I remember this now in hindsight, right? And this is the benefit of like reading. Like, I couldn't remember it because I just
Mm.
read 200 pages, but now it shows me this, and I'm like, that's exactly right. That's what I wanted to get. Right. But I wasn't at the gym with the spiral notebook, pen and paper, like, write this down at the beginning of my sales calls, right? I just kind of casually, this is standing out to me. I'm going to highlight it and then I'll refer back to it later. Okay. And so that's just a good question, right? We have our discovery. Not our discovery. We have our small talk, right? Just, oh, where are you from? What do you do? Whatever. And then, okay, well, before we really get into the conversation, just what got your attention there? Just like a good open-ended question to let them persuade themselves. So then you come into our company wiki, right? And so I start looking at, all the different pieces that I want to have for a sales process, right? So I want to have our negotiating plan. I want to have the guarantees. I want to have the actual like sales call flow is a lot of what gave me the idea for this. So let's say now hypothetically, I want to train someone on my team to handle sales calls instead of me. And again, now that I have these notes, right? So based on the book notes, write a basic bullet point outline. And GPT already knows my business because I've like saved that in memory before, but we can add that here as well. Bullet point outline of a sales call flow script for selling email marketing services to, let's say, I don't know, lawyers, because that's the niche that we serve. We just signed a new lawyer client, and I was like, oh, that's a really good client. Maybe want to sign more of those. So I want my sales script ready for those situations.
And for someone that's now just catching up on the live stream, if you could kind of just give us a summary of just the outline of the steps that we've taken so far to get to here in terms of the automations.
Yeah. So the main automation, really, there's one tool handling the automations, if you will, and then it's interacting with other tools to benefit from the automation. The tool that we're using is called Readwise, and what it does is it organizes all of the highlights that you've mostly saved from books. So as you're reading on your Kindle, you might highlight a passage, and I mean, that's just a whole other part of automation that's nice, is if you're like on your Kindle and you highlight something, then you can use the Kindle app on your computer later on to see your highlights. But you highlight on your Kindle, or you highlight on, and so this is all the places it can automatically synchronize and import the highlights from, right? iBook, Apple Books, it can do from Instapaper, your bookmarked tweets.
Let's talk
And
specifically about your use case though. Like this use case, you've been
so
reading
this
a
use
business
case is
book.
Kindle. I've been
Yeah,
reading
you're on
a
Kindle.
book about sales, how to improve your sales process, how to get better at sales. I've been reading that book on my Kindle on the bike at the gym for like 20 minutes a day.
And at that
And
point,
then,
you're highlighting key passages that are of interest to you.
exactly, I'm like, oh, I want to revisit that later. That's a question that I want to ask in my sales conversation. Oh, that's how, this is something I said a minute or two ago, right? Maybe before this person jumped into the live stream, that I want to, that's an objection I get all the time. I really like the way the book describes how to deal with it. So I import, the highlights are automatically in Readwise. Then what Readwise also does is it exports them to your favorite note-taking app. So it could, again, just export them to Google Docs, which might be something that's more common, might make more sense for a lot of people. I'm just
For
familiar
me,
with the
it'd
tool called
be
Roam.
yeah, you've got Roam. I would be Notion, but you can
Yep.
export it to anywhere.
Yep, exactly. And then I have all my highlights here, and then I can just copy and paste them from here into a ChatGPT conversation.
Yeah.
So the example I just gave, how does the book suggest to deal with the objection I need to think about it?
And while this is formulating a response for anyone listening, the main benefit I'm seeing in this is that you don't need to keep all of the questions that you have top of mind, right? Because you are able to just highlight this and automatically imports and exports for you. So essentially, you can read on this at a later point. You can tackle that task at a later point. You don't need to keep a million things on your mind at all points, right?
Exactly. The like I'm reading this book, it's just a way to be more effective in your learning and application of new material, is what I would say.
Mm.
Like when you're reading, you kind of have this, at least I sometimes, I don't want to know if it's quite an anxiety or a guilt or what you would call it, but you feel some pressure, some obligation, and then, or on the inverse, some dissonance. You're reading something, you're like, that's really interesting. I want to make sure I remember that when I encounter that situation again.
Yeah.
Right. Next time I'm on, right before, I know I have a sales call today in like 3 hours, and I want to, there's a way the book, I just don't want to deal with this problem again. I remember this thing from the book. I could like get it on my Kindle and try to remember the page or the keywords. The thing with AI, right, that we've probably used this term before, maybe not, is called semantic search, meaning you can retrieve information based on the meaning of it rather than based on the exact word. So if you want to find the part of this in the book, right, you maybe say, you just look up, think about it. And maybe the book says think about it 400 times. Like the words think about it appear 400 times. So you just can't find the information efficiently. Whereas you say now, and because it's on the Kindle and you can't export books from your Kindle, but you can export your notes from them, right? You can just upload the notes here and say, how do I handle when they say I need to think about it? And if we look at the answer now, according to the notes from the book, when a prospect says I need to think about it, here are some suggestions, right? And then it goes through exactly how you should handle that.
And I think this is like, if we think of this, at least in my sense, I think of this as like a two-pronged solution. One, I think a lot of people are guilty of the same thing that I'm guilty of, is that I can work through a book, I can read 10 pages and not understand what the last 10 pages I've been reading are. So,
Yep.
for one, I think it gets you in the process of actually reading what's important to you and kind of being on the lookout for passages that are relevant to your life, whether that's a self-development book or a book about psychology or business. It doesn't really matter what it is, but you're just like, you're more on the lookout for that. And then second part, by using Readwise and kind of setting up the imports and the exports, if someone is less technical, kind of gets you in the process of understanding how automations work, right? It's like a pretty simplistic one to start with, to the point where
Mm-hmm.
you can see something like this in action. Do you know what I mean? And it's around something that a lot of people have enjoyed and a lot of people get value out of, which is reading books about subjects that they're interested in. Go and handle Make and Zapier at a later point, but in terms of getting into stuff like this, I think people need to see the fun in it. They need to see the applicability of it. And if you
Exactly.
read, which most people do, this is where it's applicable. Mike in the chat has asked, can it summarize your highlights?
Yeah. Um, do you want to just, there's a lot of ways you could prompt to summarize, but sometimes what I like to do with ChatGPT is just put the material fresh in again. So copying the highlights again, putting them here. Let's paste them in and then say, maybe extract the 10 or give me a 10 bullet point summary of these highlights from this book. And what you could do, so you could say that could be fine. Or you could also, to your situation, say, specifically, I've been struggling with this, so give me the 10 that are most relevant to me. But let's just go with overview. And again, you can just run it again with a different question.
And you could do this at the end of your book. You could read through the entire book, take all
Exactly.
of these that have been highlighted,
All
and
of
be
the
like, all right,
highlights.
what am I getting out of this book as a whole?
And so, Liam, this is a good question from Mike as well, because this is something, I kind of had messaged you this idea yesterday and said, Do you think this would be like interesting to the community? And you're like, yes. One of the other things I mentioned that I wanted to potentially cover was one of the easiest ways to create content, and one of, in my opinion, the best things to create content about is just simply talking about what you're learning about, right? So you put on LinkedIn, I just read this book. Here are 5 things that I learned. Or you record a YouTube video or an Instagram short, the 5 most interesting ideas from this book. And now, again, you could benefit from, as you're reading with pen, like I have a pen in my hand right now, pen and paper. This was interesting. This was interesting. But you could also, maybe you're just lazy, or again, lazy, busy. Sometimes it's genuine laziness. Sometimes it's like you just also have, a dog and a business and all these other responsibilities, and you're just like, listen, I'm not gonna like stop every time. I want to read on the couch and relax. But then later, I'm going to come back to this and ask AI for the 5 most interesting things. So now I could say, script this into, 30 to 50 seconds Instagram video style that includes the hook. It's like the 5 most interesting things you need to know about sales based on this book. And then it gives you the whole script, or it gives you the LinkedIn post. Because once you have your notes, the hardest part is just, again, the main thing that we've automated is taking all of your notes. Like, you remember in school, maybe you'd like annotate in the margins with a pen and paper.
Yep.
Like, you would never, ever, unless you absolutely had to for school or something, take the time to like actually take those notes out of the book and put them somewhere else. You would never go on pen and paper unless like your teacher forced you to like show me your 20 notes. But now, and what this does too with the Kindle, is you highlight it, and then you can also highlight and type note, and then type in a note on the Kindle, and that gets exported as well. So now it's literally pulling out all the marginalia from the books and putting it here. And then once you have that in one place with AI, right, any task you would want to do from a book, summarize the book for me, turn it into a presentation for my team. Maybe I want to put my Slack group like the 5 most interesting things I learned. And then what's kind of gamified about Readwise is the daily review, right? Where it just shows you 10 highlights and you just like go through it. And it's just like a little daily learning activity. So you've automated the
That,
process of like reviewing your notes without any effort. You
yeah.
just click daily review and it picks 10 randomly for you.
So that's what I was going to ask. So that daily review, obviously, Readwise can connect to Twitter accounts, whatever else, as well as your Kindle and so many things. You have that daily review, but you also mentioned before Mike was on, or the audience was on here just now, that you can connect it to an email app that will send you an email based on the collation of those notes as well, right?
Not even an email app, just an email, right? So Readwise, let's go home here. Um, email preferences. So send to my email. Review settings at
So
once
you
every
need a
other day at
separate
5
one
a.m.
for this setup. It'll just send this email to you automatically. Here's a review of your
Yeah,
notes, and then you can go through them.
yep. So I want 10 highlights every day, or 1 highlight a day, or 15 highlights a day. Um, prioritizing my recent highlights or prioritizing my older highlights. Like, show me the books I read. I've had this. I've been paying for Readwise since I think 2018. So like I have 6 years of notes in here. Um,
Mm.
and then you can also like go through. This is really granular, but you can also say like, so for example, a lot of this is like fiction I was reading. I highlight fiction because I just, whenever I see something interesting, I highlight it, right? I've just been used to it. But like, I don't need to see this in my daily emails. So, like, don't show me these David Baldacci books. Like, that's not that helpful. But the dog training, that's actually pretty relevant. The sales book, that's pretty relevant. $100 million leads, that's super relevant, right? How to start a ghostwriting business, super relevant. More fiction, not as relevant.
Yeah,
And then
I
I can
love that.
also, yeah, save tweets. Oh, interesting. Yeah, so Cody Schneider, he's a good guy, like account, Cold Email Wizard, all of the Marketing Max, right? All of these interesting to heal. So I have all these tweets from these different accounts, and I can also adjust the frequency that those appear in my daily email digest.
Can you show me how you would configure one of them to come from your Twitter account? Like, what is it you press to make a Twitter account come to Readwise, or a specific tweet
Exactly.
come to Readwise?
So connect and sync, import highlights, connect to Twitter. So uh, I mean, you just hit change account or set up account, and then it would just bring up that like window where you press login, approve.
But to do it, so all you need to do is reply to any of these tweets with at Readwise save, and then it brings it there.
You'll need to do that once you have to connect your account.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not meaning the connecting the account part, like that's pretty self-explanatory,
Yeah.
but in terms of
Yeah.
saving a specific tweet, you do that by going on to the actual tweet and then just atting the comments at readwise.save or whatever. Could you show us that? Could
Yep.
you bring up your Twitter and have a
I think so. Um, yeah, that should be fine. All right. So let's see. What's it? What's an account here?
marketing max? There he is again.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't want to. That's.
You
Let
don't
me
need to
know
save
it.
that one.
So this is a friend of ours who like puts out really interesting tweets, right? So maybe I thought this was like, oh, well, that's too audio heavy. Yeah. So maybe I'm gonna. This is good, right? So maybe he's a product manager. So let's say I'm a product manager, and I thought this was a really good tweet, right? At Readwise. Well, let's get this right. If I bookmark it, it automatically will save it, but that might take like a day. It might not come in for like 24 hours. So I
Hmm.
literally just hit bookmark, and that's fine. Or what it say? Twitter at Readwise save. Oh, and if you do save thread, it saves the whole thread if it's like a whole long thread. And again, I haven't
Because
done this one in. Mhm.
I've seen
You've seen
different
that
ones
before, probably.
before. There's not Readwise. I've seen people comment another thing. I can't remember what the term
Well,
was
there's
off the top of
also
my head.
Thread Reader on Roll.
Yeah, Unroll is what I've seen before.
That basically takes the thread and turns it into a blog post.
Got you. All right. So there's lots of
Yeah,
automations that are different programs that people are using.
exactly. But so I don't know if this one's going to come in just yet or not. I don't know how if it's live or how it works. I mean, if we
Yeah,
go
what
to
the
tweets,
latency is.
yeah, exactly. Because I don't really like Cody's got some good ones, and this is just another view I didn't even show. So this is like Readwise's native view. So podcasts are great for agency businesses. Then you can tag highlights in here as well. So I could tag this as like I don't know. So you can see my tags: entrepreneurship, motivation, business, investing, learning, funny, clever. I'll just call this marketing probably. And then so maybe right, this is another idea. So then you could go into all of your tags and say, how do I find my tags? Um, I'm not sure how to find highlight tags. Here we go. So I could go into all my tags, marketing. I already had that, right? And say I've read 5 marketing books. These are the key takeaways from all of them, right? Because you've aggregated all of the marketing ideas you've had from all of the different sources that you've read. Or like entrepreneurship, like I think I actually have like a lot of. I thought I did. Yes. So you have 28 highlights in here, right? So, you know, I've read 20 books about entrepreneurship. These are the main takeaways. And I could just, command A this into ChatGPT, right? Make this summarize these ideas in 10 bullets. Right. So those are 10 things every entrepreneur needs to know, right? And then source, and then I can just say, right, reference at the end of each bullet, which book the idea came from. And so now I have like a long blog post or a long Twitter thread or a YouTube video of like 10 things I learned from these 10 entrepreneurship books. And then
Yeah.
this is like a whole thing right there. And you actually have the books as citations and you actually have, right. So now I can say under each link to the quote, also provide the quote, let's say indented, that inspired the takeaway. And so now I've got this whole Yeah, look at that. This is really nice, right? So I could turn this into a PowerPoint with, I mean, it's basically creating, maybe this is a cringy thing. Maybe people think it's true. I mean, it is true. Is it's a way to get compound interest on the efforts that you're already putting in, right? If you're already putting in the
Mm.
time to read it and you're already putting in the time to highlight, now with no effort, right? Maybe a fun effort because you just read them and tag them, or you really don't even need to read them. You could export these in another way, but you've just, without any additional effort, I've now created this amazing asset because of things that I've read. And I'm not an imposter because I actually have read these books. Actually, like maybe it was a while ago, but like this isn't just me randomly saying pick 10 books and tell me 10 things from each. Like this is from my own database of books that I've read in the past.
Yeah. I mean,
So
it's an activity that people don't really think. They think scrolling on Twitter, like reading a book, it's separate from work or business or what it is they do, and like you are really turning it into an asset with this.
exactly.
So I don't think a lot of people kind of know this. I don't know many other people that use Readwise and have built up this much of a library with it as well. So, how much are you paying a month for this?
I think it's 60 a year. It's like $5 a month.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
mean, for the amount of value you can provide, I mean, I think we can think of it in two ways. Like one, regardless of whether you produce content from this and publishing it or are publishing it on social media, like you're still getting a crazy good list of quotes and usable insights from everything you've been consuming. And you're getting that through to your email, you're getting that index to look at a later point, like it's a reminder of what you've learned to reinforce that learning, regardless of you whether you then go on to use that in a different domain. So yeah, I mean I think that was an amazing one. How did you come up with that? Like you said you were brainstorming a bit beforehand and you could have eventually came on
I
this.
was
Like
just
why
doing
did you
this
decide?
yesterday, right?
You were just doing this yesterday, like this is an automation.
I was just doing it. No, I mean, I was reading that book on the bike, and then I was like, okay, now I need to make my updated sales. I learned a lot of ideas from this book. I want to make sure those ideas are reflected in my sales script. I want to make sure those ideas are reflected in my notes for both myself and the rest of my team. Okay, do I want to just go pull up my book and no, like I already have these notes. They're already here. I set that up like a year ago or like 5 years ago. And then, I mean, I was just doing this. Like, this isn't hypothetical. And then I was like, well, wait, I could also use this as what I speak to the community about. I was just, because I was still like, I was driving home last night after a run, um, and it was a running group, so I like drove to meet with the group. It sounds funny to like drive somewhere to run. It's like you can just run without driving. Sounds like running with extra steps, but or less steps, depending on what you mean by steps. Basically, anyway, I was like, that was the last thing. I was kind of brainstorming throughout the day. I was like, I don't want to go to bed without having decided, because this is afternoon for you, but it's morning for me. I don't want to go to bed without having decided what to speak about. And so then I was like in the car, I was like, oh, that is automation. Like that's the problem with automation is that once you've automated it, like you no longer see it as magic. It just is.
Mm,
Right? It's like tech, all technology. Technology is kind of we just think like technology really only refers to like what is new technology. Like we don't consider the
yeah,
refrigerator technology when like 100 years ago the refrigerator was technology. But the refrigerator has some automation that like keeps the food cold, right? Because it just regulates its temperature somehow. And
mm,
this is something that I set up like in automation so long ago that's like this isn't an automation, but of course it is, right? It totally is.
for sure. I love it. I'm gonna start doing that today. You watch me.
Set it up.
Set it up, make it
Yeah,
happen.
I was with you when you bought your Kindle.
I know. I know you were. I think I got it delivered to your house in the end, didn't I?
You did because yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, there we are. Sorted.
So I know that you have everything you need, and you don't need just to like not turn off the person watching this. You don't need a Kindle, right? Apple Books if you have an iPhone, Kindle app on your computer. You can use the Kindle app on any device. You don't actually need a Kindle. I don't want people to
Yeah.
like be watching this and be like, oh, I need a Kindle. You don't need a Kindle.
Yeah.
You don't even
I love
again. It even works with if people miss this in the presentation. you can import highlight. Well, one, they have like the scanner that like is really efficient for scanning physical books if you want to take the effort. You like scan your physical books and it extracts, can see visually what's highlighted. But also, if you just list the books that you've read, it will show you the most popular highlights from those books from the community. So if maybe there's a book that you didn't even highlight, but you're like, I remember reading this book before I was a highlighter type person, you can
Mm,
still get a lot of the same benefits.
yeah, get your head start before you build up your own thing, essentially.
Exactly.
And I think that's good that they have the scanning feature in there as well, because I still,
Yeah,
even though
their
I
mobile
have the
app
Kindle,
is quite
I
good.
still have physical books that I'll read, so it's a perfect idea. Lewis, I want to thank you for coming on again. I appreciate your time, and we'll see everyone next week. And anyone watching on YouTube and socials, thank you for watching. Hope you got some good insights out of this.